Okay, well, I guess we're ready to get started. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. Thanks for your patience as we get started. It's inevitably we're going to run into some technical issues as we work remotely on the webinar program. This committee is assembled electronically today for the purposes of inviting public comment on legislation. And before we get started, we'll share some information related to the fact that this meeting is conducted using electronic means. So this meeting is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. This means that anyone who is a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People on Zoom meeting waiting to testify cannot be seen or heard until they're called upon to speak. This meeting will be recorded and available to view on the committee's YouTube channel soon after this meeting has concluded. So just a couple of housekeeping things. If your name on the Zoom square is not the name you use to register to testify, it may be a bit of a challenge to identify you. It looks like we're pretty good in that department. So for people who are here to testify, you're going to be technically an attendee. So it may take a second when we call people to momentarily upgrade you to a panelist where you can speak. It might look like you're being kicked off, but you actually are not. You're just being upgraded to a panelist, so then you'll be able to speak. So it'll look a little strange, but then you'll join the meeting and you can testify, and then you'll go back down. So with that, we'll begin by doing committee introductions. I'll just call on the member and they can introduce themselves, and we'll start with the House Chairman Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Chiazzo, House District 28, West Scarborough.
Okay, Senator Farron.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brad Farron, representing Senate District 3, which is the majority of Somerset County. We're a nice balmy 6 below this morning on the banks of the Kennebec.
Representative Kinney.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Ann Kinney. I represent House District 99, which are 9 towns in western Waldo County.
Representative Corey.
Good morning. I'm Patrick Corey. I represent House District 25, which is Wyndham.
Representative Wood.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Barb Wood. I represent District 38, which is the western end of the peninsula in Portland.
Representative Riley.
Good morning. I'm Morgan Riley. I represent half of Westbrook in District 34.
Representative McCrate.
Good morning. I'm Jay McCrate, representing Harpswell, West Bath, and part of Brunswick in the House.
Representative Tuttle.
Representative John Tuttle. I represent District 18, the east side of Sanford.
Representative Harrington.
Good morning, Matt Harrington. I represent House District 19, which is part of the city of Sanford.
Representative Dolph.
Good morning. I'm Representative Joseanne Dolph in District 115, which is Roxbury, Rumford, Milton Township, Woodstock, and Sumner.
Great. Representative Supika.
Good morning. I'm Laura Supika, and I represent District 126, a portion of Bangor.
Great. And then with us, we have our staff from OPLA. We have Janet Stocco and Sam Prower. And our committee clerk is Karen Montel. So again, this is our first public hearing, so please be patient as we work through any issues along the way. Just reminders for committee members, as we passed in our committee rules last week, the use of the chat function is limited only to technical questions or assistance if you need IT support or IDing participants that we don't know their names. The chat is never to be used for substantive discussion between members. Again, if you would like to, during the hearing, if you'd like to be recognized, if you can raise your use the raise hand function. We'll call on members as we go. And a reminder that during public hearings, questions are for clarifying questions only. So for each bill being heard today, myself or my co-chair will call on sponsors and co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, you'll be promoted from attendee to participant. After presentation by sponsors and co-sponsors, we'll call on members of the public based on how they registered to testify. When you're called upon, I will ask you to state your name, your place of residence, and the organization you represent, if any. After you're done speaking and there are no more questions from members, I or my co-chair will return you to the attendee position and call upon the next person registered to testify. When you're called upon, please make sure that your microphone is not on mute. And we'll kind of give people a heads up and call people a few in advance. And generally speaking, we're going to be using the clock all session, but where we didn't fully let everybody know this week for today, we won't do that. But in the future, starting on Wednesday, we plan on using the 3-minute clock for all testimony, as we're a pretty high bill load committee. Looks like we're gonna have like 140 bills or something. So it would be greatly appreciated if when you're done offering testimony to the committee on the bill scheduled for today, that you exit the Zoom meeting. You may continue to watch the hearing on the committee's YouTube channel at that point. If you need to exit the meeting before being called upon to testify, please be aware that you may submit written testimony at any time by accessing the legislature's testimony submission page, and that's on www.legislature.maine.gov. So again, just as a final reminder, this meeting is being broadcasted and recorded on YouTube and can be heard over the legislature's audio broadcast system. Any testimony you submit is public and may be posted on the legislature's website. Okay, so with all of that, we will begin the public hearings. And so we have 2 bills this morning, LD 102, an act to extend the time frame for processing absentee ballots, and LD 112, an act to facilitate the timely and accurate counting of absentee ballots by extending the processing period. These bills are identical, so we're just going to merge the 2 hearings into one. And we'll begin with each sponsor giving their testimony, and then we'll go to the public. So with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Moriarty to kick us off with his testimony. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Lucchini, Representative Caiazzo, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I'm Steve Moriarty. I represent House District 45, which is the town of Cumberland and part of the town of Gray. And it's an honor for me to be among those who will testify at your very first Zoom hearing in the first session. So it's a unique experience for all of us. The bill I've submitted, I think, is very straightforward and I think readily understood. In 2020, there was, as we know, a massive transition to on the part of Maine residents to voting by absentee. In part, this was driven by the COVID pandemic, and I think in part by a reluctance to stand for long periods of time in line in anticipation of large in-person turnout. In any event, a history-making number of Maine residents voted by absentee. And I think from that, we can anticipate that in the future, there will be a relatively higher number of absentee voters than we have generally experienced in the past. The goal of my bill is for the benefit of our city and town clerks to improve efficiency, to diminish stress, to spread out the workload at the end of the election process, and to provide the public with the earliest possible results after the polls close on election day. Now, please note that I am not proposing any changes whatsoever to the various methods of voting which are currently on the books, so to speak. This has nothing to do with voting in person or by absentee, but merely the process by which absentee votes may be processed. Several key points to make. First of all, we already have in the statute, and that is 21A MRSA 760-B, a process for the early treatment of absentee ballots. The statute provides that 4 days immediately before Election Day, absentee ballots may be processed by the clerks. Therefore, this bill does not create a process that does not yet already exist. In fact, it's been on the books for a while. What it does simply is to extend by only 3 days the time period in which absentees may be processed prior to election. That is to go from 4 days to 7 days. And it's noteworthy to point out that last summer, by executive order, the governor did in fact extend the time period for processing absentees by the identical time period that is reflected in my bill. That executive order was number 8 for FY 20/21, issued on August 26, 2020. The 7-day time period was therefore in effect on the general election day 3 months ago. So in effect, we have already had a test run of the bill that I offer before you this morning. And under the most demanding circumstances possibly imaginable, given the high number of voters who chose the absentee option this past fall. Also, it's noteworthy to point out that the test run worked out exceptionally well. It was a complete success from the point of view of the clerks, and you'll be hearing, I believe, testimony later this morning from a representative of the Maine Town and City Clerks Association to that effect. In short, what my bill simply does is codify into statute the law and practice that was in effect 3 months ago in the November general election. Please note also that the bill does not create a mandate upon the cities or the towns. It only allows the cities and the towns, if they wish, in their own discretion, to process absentee ballots on an early basis, but it does not require them to do so. Also, cities and towns would not be required to begin processing 7 days in advance of Election Day. They could choose to process early for a shorter period of time prior to Election Day. They would merely need to publish the date on which they plan to begin early processing so that the public would know. Again, this is strictly an option on the part of the cities and towns and by no means a requirement at all. As a final closing comment, I believe you'll be hearing testimony from the Secretary of State, who will be offering another minor amendment to section 760B. And I will just say in advance, in the event that I do not speak again, that I support the Secretary of State's proposed change. So thank you very much for your consideration this morning.
Thank you, Representative Moriarty. Is there any questions from committee members for the representative? Representative Chiazzo.
I just wanted to thank Representative Moriarty for being the very first participant in our first public hearing. So let the record show that he is the very first, not just one of the first. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much. My pleasure.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should have had my mouse set on my mute button. I have concerns. I've been a ballot clerk in the past in my little town of Knox, which I realize is not as big as Cumberland, but I do have family that you actually represent, Representative Moriarty.
Oh, okay.
My uncle lives in Cumberland, and
oh,
he keeps me up to date on what goes on down there. So watch out, because he'll be asking me about you.
I'll be looking.
My concern with this, we already have 4 days before, and that's never really been an issue in the past. This was extenuating circumstances this year with the pandemic and an increased number of absentee ballots. But I'm concerned about how we're going to protect those who vote early, who vote by absentee early. And if we're counting ballots a week out, how do we guarantee that those ballots are protected and that numbers don't start coming out of the offices. We've had issues across the state in the past with clerks for various reasons, all kinds of different things, and clerks are not always they're not always perfect, which none of us are. So my concern is protecting to know, they're going to start counting it out. What if the votes are coming out strongly on the Republican side, and then and the Democrats want to suddenly push, and I'm not, it could go either way. It could also be a strong Democrat push, strong Democrat vote, and now pushing for getting more Republicans out to vote. People are concerned with the election process right now. There's a lot of people that are worried that there has been fraud. I'm not saying that I've seen that here in Maine, but counting our ballots that early just worries me in terms of where we're going to have that proper protection of those ballots.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Kinney. That's a terrific question. And I don't know if you have the entire version of section 760-B before you. If not, I'm sure your analyst can provide it for you. But I'm pleased to be able to tell you that the answers to your questions are actually already contained in the statute itself, in the various subsections below the introductory paragraph, which is the only part of the statute that I propose to amend. In fact, there are 6 numbered subsections to 760-B. And let me just bring this in front of me here. First of all, I don't mean to split hairs, but there's a difference between counting ballots and processing ballots. So when an absentee ballot is entered into the voting machine, it is processed, but technically it's not counted because ballots can't be counted until after the polls close on election night. So the law says that you cannot get an early tally. You have no way of knowing how the votes are coming in and who's got the lead and who's coming up short. At the end of each day of processing, the statute also says that the ballot box must be locked and sealed, and then number 2, must be secured in a vault or other locked, secure location. So if absentees are processed every day, the ballot box is locked and sealed, it's stuck in the vault overnight, and then if your town is elected to do so, you may process absentees in the same fashion on the following day up to election day itself. So there is no way of, again, accessing the tally as the ballots are processed until after election day is over. And there are multiple provisions in the statute right now that provide full security for the ballot box and its contents. And I believe that the Maine Town and City Clerks Association will back me up on this and will validate what I've just told you, and that there are no concerns with ballot box security or with early access to the tally over a several-day period, because that's strictly prohibited. I hope I've answered all your questions, but if not, I'd be glad to continue. And
You have a follow-up, Representative Kinney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It all sounds great, but human error comes in, and not every town has a counting machine. I know that this last election, many towns were part of a grant program and got some, and my little town in Knox was one of those, but there are still several towns. I represent 9 towns in Waldo County, Western Waldo County, and not everyone had a counting machine. So if they're processing those ballots early, they are actually counting them to find out if they're going to have a tally somewhere if they're going to start counting them early. And that's where concern comes in. And I know that not every single municipality has those machines in the state of Maine. And so we are going to have the issue of human error and human desire to possibly cause a problem. And just because it's against the law doesn't mean it won't happen.
Yeah, I understand, and I guess we can't legislate against human error, but we can educate to the greatest extent possible. And to your point, I just want to read to you one sentence from the existing statute, which I don't propose to change at all, to show you how tight it's written. It reads, "The absentee ballots may not be counted, voter intent may not be determined, and election results may not be obtained or released until after the polls have closed on election day and all election ballots have been cast and all absentee ballots have been processed." Now, as to what the smaller communities without voting machines may do as a practical matter in early processing, frankly, I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate before you, but the representative from the Maine Town and City Clerks Association may have some more light to shed on that point.
Representative Doloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I would just like a little clarification that I'm probably not sure about the difference of processing and counting. Now, when these absentee ballots are processed, are the envelopes opened? And if the town has a machine, put into the machine?
Yes, this is what my understanding is, and again, it's subject to confirmation by the witness that I mentioned a moment ago. What I understand is when at the end, typically at the end of a business day, a town decides to process the absentees it has received that day. It opens each envelope individually. The ballot, as you know, has been folded up and it's got creases in it. So they've got to spread it out and try to flatten the creases as best they can. And then, assuming your town has machines, the ballot is inserted into the machine and is counted in the machine's mechanism or counting process. But there's no tally run. There's no way of seeing what the vote was or how the vote is coming in. And so for each and every ballot, that's what's done individually. The envelope is opened, the ballot is smoothed out, the crease is taken away, and it's put into the machine. The machine then internally keeps a running tally of what's coming in, but that tally is not available by law until the polls close, after the polls close on election day.
Okay, just to follow up.
Sure.
Is it possible that the town clerk may not like one of the candidates on that ballot, and as she opens them and uncreases them, somehow they just don't get in that machine if she finds that one candidate is getting too many votes? Is that a possibility?
Well, you know, I guess we say in life that anything is possible. And we can't legislate against all conceivable possibilities. But I would say to you, in all honesty, I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that the clerks who have taken an oath to defend the law and the Constitution of the state would engage in that sort of activity.
I would hope so too, but I do know of some instances, and I'm just afraid that giving them more time to open them and put them in, that's more time they can check each ballot.
Well, again,
that's just my comment.
And Representative Moriarty, just a clarification, when the clerks have to publicly notice that they're going to process ballots and the public can watch, correct?
Yes, they can.
Thanks.
They can. Yep.
Thank you.
They can watch the whole opening of the envelopes, the smoothing of the ballots, and the entry of the ballots into the machines, totally open to the public. That's why the towns have to publish the date on which they intend to process in advance if they choose to do so. But again, they're not required.
Did you have a follow-up, Representative Doloff, or are you good? Okay. Representative Kinney?
I'm good, thank you, sorry.
Okay, yeah, no problem, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, on that inspection of the ballots, it seems to be part 3 of this section, where a member of the public may make a written request to the clerk to inspect absentee ballot applications and envelopes before they are processed. If the request is made by 9 a.m. each day, that the clerk will process absentee ballots as specified on the notice of early processing under subsection 2. So it seems that if they don't make that request prior to 9 a.m. of that day, then the public can be able to inspect or it's possible that they may be denied being able to inspect. So this is part of the concern we have. It seems to be that Representative Dolph and I.
Well, I guess my only response to that is that, again, it is the 4-day advance period is part of the statute anyway. That's on the books. And all I'm proposing is a 3-day extension to allow the clerks, for their benefit, additional time to get this work done. Because when you're dealing with, in some of the larger community, 2,000 or 3,000 absentee ballots, if you're forced to squeeze that into a 4-day period as opposed to a 7-day period, you're talking longer hours, more exhaustion, more stress, and a less efficient process. I think your question would I thank you for your question, but I think it could also be presented to the representative from the Town of Clerks Association to see, as a practical matter, what they do in that instance.
Right, and we do have a representative from the clerks here who I'm sure can walk us through a lot of the specifics. Representative Dolph, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I guess I like to know. I know this last election was in, which we still are, in a pandemic. Is this your reason for putting this through? Because since this pandemic, everything seemed to be fine. So, should we wait another year and see if it happens again? Are we changing it because of the pandemic? Thank you.
My response is that not exactly. I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think the pandemic was one of 2 primary factors that promoted the change by executive order from 4 to 7 days, and the desire of people to avoid having to gather in large groups and stand in line on election day to vote in person. Again, it's my feeling that once you've voted absentee and you've discovered how easy it is and how many different options there are available to you in terms of ballot drop-off boxes or mailing it in or turning it in person, that you're going to be more and more people are going to be inclined to choose that option in the future. So I'm anticipating not a lengthy pandemic, God forbid, but I'm anticipating increased voter participation by absentee for general elections in the future. By the way, this only applies to general elections and not to primaries or local elections or anything like that. And so in anticipation of that strong possibility, my goal was to make life easier and the process easier for the clerks and volunteers who serve us.
Great. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Representative Moriarty, for coming into our public hearing.
Thank you very much.
So next up, we have our other sponsor, Representative Roberts. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. I am Representative Tiffany Roberts, and I represent House District 6, which is comprised of the majority of both North Berwick and South Berwick. I'm here today to present LD 112, an act to facilitate the timely and accurate counting of absentee ballots by extending the processing period. What we used to see as normal and procedural has changed drastically this past year. As a state, we have overcome obstacles and adapted to challenges that this pandemic has placed before us. In adapting to these challenges, we have found ways to conduct ourselves and our business in ways we never thought possible, and in ways that are proven to be more efficient. LD 112 is an example of how, in our adaptation, we have found ways to be more efficient. This bill solidifies the governor's executive order regarding the counting of absentee ballots. Current law allows a municipality or jurisdiction that conducts its own elections to process absentee ballots beginning the fourth day immediately prior to an election day. This bill allows a municipality or jurisdiction to process absentee ballots beginning on the seventh day immediately prior to the election day. I heard overwhelmingly from my home municipality that this change was instrumental in the timely processing of ballots. My town only has a town clerk. There was no deputy clerk at the time of last election, so the responsibility fell solely on that one person, along with all the other duties that all of our town clerks have on them. I'm sure it's not hard to imagine how significant the extra days to count over 3,000 ballots, which is almost half of my town's population, was for my town clerk. Municipalities all over the state were relieved of these time constraints. In addition to the bill before you, and in consultation with the Secretary of State, I'd like to submit an amendment to LD 112. Under current law, a municipal clerk must notify the Secretary of State and the chair of each political party in the municipality at least 60 days before Election Day of the clerk's intent to process ballots prior to the election day, so when they're going to start. This amendment provides that the municipal clerk must send notice at least 30 days prior to Election Day. The proposed amendment is a result of municipalities finding that the 60-day notice provision was too premature for the clerks to identify how many absentee ballots they would have to process in order to schedule the appropriate number of early processing days. The governor, in Executive Order 8, changed the notice deadline from 60 to 30 days prior to the November 2020 election. Both the Secretary of State's office and the Clerks Association felt that this worked well for the November election. The Secretary of State's office also believes that this is an appropriate amount of time for public notice, as they did not hear any complaints that this was too late for planning to observe the process by political parties. Or the Secretary of State would not want the notice to be less than 30 days before the election, because they need to plan for the number of towns that are early processing and code, test, and distribute the appropriate number of USB devices, so tabulators they will use for processing the absentees. The amendment language is below in my testimony for your reference. I also submitted it ahead of time, and I believe it is on your website as well, under your committee tab. I think I checked it, it should be there. I want to thank you all very much for your consideration on your first hearing here. And I would be glad to answer any questions that didn't already come up for Representative Moriarty.
Thank you, Representative Roberts. And the amendment is on where Janet's walked us through on the committee website under meeting materials. Representative Kinney.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Representative Roberts. Nice to see you again. Having served with you on ACF, it's kind of nice to see you again. Same questions that I had for Representative Moriarty and concerns that we have. I'd love to hear your take.
My take is that this is not a new process. This is just, it's adding a couple extra days. And like Representative Moriarty said, this is proven to people that absentee ballot voting is an option and an efficient option. I mean, as far as concerns, regarding pushes from one party or another, I mean, this is how we operated in the last general election, and it got us all in our seats where we are today. So I don't know that any of us are taking issue with that per se. Well, I'm trying to remember each one of your questions because there was a few. I'm sorry, Representative Kinney.
Sure, I have concerns about protecting the process. In the small towns, like you mentioned, your own town has just a one town clerk, and I don't know if you had a counting machine. So processing those ballots ahead of time involves actual human counting of the ballots if we're going to process them ahead of time if there is no machine to count them. I can see how a machine could be protected but at the same time, we are going to have human error with this. There is going to be human contact with that ballot to put it into the machine to figure out what's going on. And I just have concerns, I guess, on either side. And as Representative Dolph mentioned, if there's ever someone who is unable or has a personal opinion one way or another, and our clerks do. They're not, our clerks in our towns are not the same as our clerks here where they have to be nonpartisan. These are people that belong to a political party that may have a sign on their lawn. They may have a position that they prefer. And it's human nature to want to participate in some way, and I just have concerns about what could happen to our elections if we keep extending this date out. Or at what point do we allow counting ballots for days and days and days after the election, which can happen? I know when I counted ballots in 2012, we were counting till 2 in the morning. Yet I went home, turned on the TV, and they'd already declared the winner. So it was a little bit disappointing to think that our ballots weren't even counted. They'd already decided a winner. It just makes me wonder.
Right.
Okay,
So
Representative Roberts, do you want to respond, or would you?
I
Okay.
guess I would just offer that I hear your concerns, Representative Kinney. Oh, is she there?
Oh.
Yeah, okay. And I would just say that, I mean, they would be the same concerns that I would assume that you would have with the 4-day counting period that's already in place. This is only adding 3 more days so that it's a full week.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your presenting the bill, Representative Roberts.
Thank you.
Seeing no other legislators or co-sponsors in the room, we'll move to the public portion of our hearing. And so again, we're going to start upgrading people as they come in, and just to we'll give a little advance notice that you're going to be coming up. So we'll start based on when people testified. So we'll start with Secretary Bellows, then we'll go to Kate Dufour and Zach Hayden for the first 3. Let's see, do we have Secretary Bellows?
She was in the attendees, but got bounced, I think.
Okay, we'll go to Kate Dufour then. If you're ready. Great, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and members of the Veteran and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Kate Dufour, and I'm here on behalf of the Maine Municipal Association at the direction of our 70-member Legislative Policy Committee to support both bills, LD 102 and 112 as amended. And both sponsors did a wonderful job expressing my testimony. We are right where they are. We believe both bills provide clerks with necessary time and flexibility. And it's important to underscore what we've been talking about thus far, what this bill doesn't do. And what it doesn't do is repeal any of the protections that are in existing law when it comes to processing ballots, processing absentee ballots. And I just want to hit on them because I think they're important. The first is those ballots have to be processed between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on an announced day, which means we're not doing this in the cover of the night or the early morning hours. We're doing it during basically business hours. The second is we can only begin that process of processing absentee ballots once the inspection is completed, if requested. And I think it bears merit discussing the fact that there's a difference between inspection and participation or witnessing. Inspection means you actually have signed up and you want to look at every one of those envelopes to make certain it's on the up and up. If you miss that inspection window, there's nothing that prevents you from being in the room when that process takes place. So if, to some of the points that I've heard, if somebody is stuffing ballots in a trash can rather than a ballot box, then you'd be there to witness that. I'm not suggesting that happens because I believe our clerks are very well trained and they respect the election process more than anyone I have ever met in my life. The other thing is the notice. There is advance notice that is provided that the community is going to conduct a processing. And that process, that notice is provided to the public, as well as provided to the Secretary of State and the chairs of municipal caucuses. So again, no secrecy. Everybody knows that a community is going to start the process. And then the final point, again, bears repeating, is that the law that prohibits the counting of ballots until after the polls close is preserved. It is in statute, and that applies to communities that have hand counts and communities that have the machines. You cannot start counting. You can process and put them away, but you cannot count those election results until the polls close at 8 p.m. on an election day. So it's for these reasons that we support it. And we also echo, we get it, the pandemic for many, many reasons, or I would suggest the 2020 election for many reasons, enjoyed a high voter turnout. And many people use the absentee process because the Secretary of State was suggesting, the governor, municipal officials were saying, use the absentee ballot process, keep us safe, keep yourself safe. And so I get it, huge drive to do absentee, but I agree with the sponsors of the bill. We might not see the same participation rates, over 500,000 people participating via absentee, but I don't think we're going to go far back into what traditional absentee balloting has been. If you look at the last 4 presidential elections, the number of absentee ballots cast were in the 230,000. I think we're going to be above that moving forward. I believe people found the absentee ballot process very convenient. It can be as cheap as you want it to be because many communities got the lock boxes, so you don't have to put a stamp on that ballot anymore. You can go to City Hall and drop it off whenever is most convenient for you. So I thank you for your time and consideration, and will answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Any clarifying questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Yep. Next up, we have Secretary Bellows. Welcome. And then following the secretary will be Zach Hayden. And then after that, Patty Dubois.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. I saw the spinning wheel saying I was being promoted and
that happens, yep.
But I'm here today to present testimony in support of both LD 102 and 112. And the department would like to thank Representative Moriarty and Representative Roberts for their thoughtful testimony and their willingness to include the amendment presented by Representative Roberts as well to their bills. So we think this works. Representative Moriarty and Representative Roberts mentioned our test run in 2020 under the executive order. From the department's perspective, our experience in November was a success, facilitating the efficient processing of the absentee ballots. And one of the successes was the announcement of Maine's election results was not delayed, unlike in other states that did not have early processing. In Maine, almost all candidates knew on election night whether they had won or lost. And that's precisely because of early processing. This increases public confidence in our election results. And it's also important for efficient tabulation of ranked choice voting should ballots need to be transported to Augusta for that tally. Now, given the questions from the committee, I want to depart from my written testimony and address the process, which Kate DeFore already ably addressed, but I just think it's so important that the public is crystal clear on how this works. Clerks issue a public notice that they are going to engage in early processing, whether that's 4 days as currently in statute or 7 days as was allowed in November. Clerks must ensure that 2 people from the municipality are present for early processing. One clerk cannot do this by themselves. Parties can and do send their own observers. And the department did note a significant number of observers in the 2020 election. On the day of early processing, it's important to note anyone can walk up and join for observation. The confusion around the 9 a.m. deadline in statute, that's for inspection. So if someone wishes to inspect the ballots, to physically look at the ballots before they're processed in their envelopes, they have until 9 a.m. on the day of early processing. Why a 9 a.m. cutoff? Because that's when the processing is allowed to begin. So obviously you wouldn't want someone off the street coming in and starting to look at the ballots as they were being processed. So that's for inspection purposes. And again, because of the ample public notice, parties have time to request the ability to inspect. So on the day of early processing, there are at least 2 people from the municipality present. The envelopes are opened. The folded ballot is removed. It's kept folded. A handful of folded ballots are amassed to conceal which voters the ballots are from. Then, once a group of ballots is amassed, the ballots are unfolded. For towns that do not have a tabulator, the ballots are simply placed in a sealed, tamper-proof container. For towns with a tabulator, the ballots are submitted into the tabulator. Now, it's important to note that the tabulators are not linked to the internet, so they can't be accessed or hacked by any outside entity. It's also important to note, as Representative Moriarty mentioned, and in accordance with statute, those ballots are not actually being counted. Should they be counted, a tape would be issued from the tabulator, verifying that a count had happened. Our deputy, Julie Flynn, who is on hand to answer questions, verifies that this has never happened. What happens at the end of the early processing is the tabulator is shut down, and it comes back online again for additional processing, should there be a second day of early processing or on election day. So just to recap, you can't do early processing with just 1 clerk. There have to be 2 people present. Parties have ample notice to provide observers and can even do ballot inspection as long as they notify the clerk up until 9 a.m. on the day of early processing. And ballots are not actually counted prior to the election. They are simply processed to prepare for the efficient count on election night after the polls have closed. What we've heard, additionally, I just want to speak to Representative Roberts' amendment, and I want to thank Representative Moriarty for his willingness to have this affixed to his legislation as well. We think it is important. What we've heard from municipal clerks is that 60 days out, they don't yet have a good grasp of how many days they may need for early processing, meaning that with the 60-day notice requirement, they may over or underestimate that scheduling. On the top of that, at the speed of which information travels these days, they and we think 30 days is adequate for public notice and parties' purposes. So finally, in summary, given that so many Mainers have demonstrated their desire and participation in absentee voting, we think it wise to continue to allow municipalities the full 7 days for early processing in the event that a municipality chooses to do so. So thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of these bills. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if the clerk could allow our deputy head of elections, Julie Flynn, to also be in the meeting so that if there's a question about the process or the history that predates my tenure, she'd be available to answer that.
Thank you, Secretary Bellows. Yeah, and we have Julie in the meeting, but we can, if she wants to testify, she can, or we can go through everything.
She wasn't planning to testify, but she's
Okay.
willing to answer any questions, or if you
Gotcha.
want.
And then we can also just, again, we don't want to also turn this into a work session either.
Fair
so.
enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll answer questions, and if there are questions I can't answer, we'll return answers to you in writing. And also, we will be available for the work session, and our deputy, Julie Flynn, will be available for the work session. And I do want to say that we are absolutely willing to supply the procedures for early processing because there are uniform guidelines for securing the ballots and for the hand count. So there's also an early processing checklist that we give to each town.
Great. Yeah, that would be really helpful for the work session. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just have a couple of quick questions for you, Secretary Bellows. So I'm kind of wondering, like, I'm trying to get a sense of what this looked like, you know, prior to us needing 7 days to do it when we were doing it in 4 days. And I was just first off wondering if we had any data that shows what kind of time is actually needed to process ABs. Like, you know, is it a day for 1,000 ABs? What does that actually look like?
So we can absolutely see what data is available and supply that to you in the work session.
Okay.
What we know is that towns really welcomed, this might be a great question to ask the Clerks Association, welcomed that opportunity for additional days. And again, I think the success was borne out because on election night, we had rapid results, and other states that do not have early processing did not.
So then that gets into my sort of next question. And, you know, I understand that we had special circumstances in the 2020 election, sort of based on a pandemic being in place. In the past, in a lot of these towns, were the full 4 days always used, you know, in order to, you know, pre-process or process ballots? And what did it look like under, you know, those types of circumstances? I know people are saying that, you know, they suspect there will be more absentee voting now that people have done it. But, you know, I'm never a huge fan of sort of changing laws based on one, do you know what I mean, kind of election. I kind of want to understand what all of this looked like, you know, prior to this one, you know, election that had, you know, very special circumstances.
So the procedures for processing under early processing did not change. Maine statute has provided for 4 days of early processing traditionally. The only thing that changed was the additional 3 days because of the increase in number of absentee ballots due to the pandemic. So for the checklist, the procedures, the requirement for 2 people to be present, the notice to the parties and the public, those have all been consistent for a long time.
Yeah, no, just curious. Like this is like one of those things where I'm kind of, you know, fooling around, you know, in my head and kind of thinking maybe this is one of those times where we could be looking at a sunset provision to try something out and everything. So that's kind of where my head's at. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I wanted to thank the Secretary for clarifying on that inspection part. I'm trying to read from a different screen and try to find this.
Absolutely.
And so, but to that point, when they're processing ballots on a particular day, are they also going to be able to process ballots that come in that day And then what happens with the inspection process? Because that could end up being an issue if people are concerned about that. And this is another concern I have, and it's been mulling around after I had several constituents comment on something that had happened in my town and I know it's perfectly legal to register. We have same day registration for voting. When people do that, what stops them from voting where they were previously and then registering 2 towns over the same day, voting again? How are we combating that? For me in my area, it had to do with college students that went from one town and then came over. And I'd like to be able to find out whether or not those who registered that day in my hometown, if they had voted previously in the other town where they voted last time. Just wondering how that works, because they actually made the mistake of saying in front of other people I wasn't there. It was constituents that came to me after the fact saying that these kids were college students who were registering, and they're like, oh, maybe I'm still registered over in such and such town. Is there a way for us to be able to see if that happened? Because they have a number that follows them, but yeah.
Yeah, and just,
Sorry.
just if we can keep it related to the bill before us and rather going into kind of a
Well,
hearing.
it kind of goes to what if they absentee vote previously and then come and register on the same day? That it does kind of go together. I am concerned because there's a lot of concerns that came out of this last election cycle.
Representative Kinney, are you concerned that college students who registered to vote on election day in your town and cast a ballot had previously voted in the 2020 election?
I guess, yeah, I'd like to know if there is a provision to allow us to find that out. And maybe it would be for a different bill, but and I have one coming up that may be more appropriate for that. But we've got you.
So just kind of curious. There is the voter participation list. So when you go and vote on election day, we're all familiar, right? You go forward, you state your name. There are 2 people there and they check your name off the list, right? So that's the voter participation list. That list is also kept when people are casting their absentee ballots. And those voter participation lists are submitted to the state. And we do a careful review of voter participation history. So if someone were to vote in one town and then cast a vote in another town, that would be caught. And I'm here to tell you with confidence that we are confident that that did not happen. There is at least one case of voter fraud where someone cast an absentee ballot that had been mailed to another person. That was immediately caught and that person was prosecuted. So we have very careful checks and balances of the voter participation history to prohibit people from engaging in double voting, voting absentee and voting in person. And it is a crime, and those people will be prosecuted. So with regards to early processing, I don't believe that this increases, again, those names are being checked against the voter participation list. So it's a standardized procedure.
Representative Wood.
Good morning. I'm not sure if this is for you, Secretary Bellows, or if it's for one of the sponsors, but I didn't realize until I think you said it, Representative Roberts, that this only applies to the general election. And I'm just curious why it also doesn't apply to the primary. I personally was declared the winner on election night with only the results from the polling locations, and all the absentee ballots didn't come in, finished being counted until the next day. I didn't find out until 6 p.m. the day after the primary that I was the winner.
So just to clarify that, the statute I believe Representative Moriarty may have been speaking about the fact that in 2020 it was only used for the general election, but in the bill that's presented to you in both bills, this would actually apply to all statewide elections. That includes general elections, primary elections, referendum elections, and special elections. In many cases, towns are unlikely to need to start processing early before some of those elections, although certainly in the city of Portland, that would be different. I also realized that I neglected, there were two parts of Representative Kinney's question, and I just want to address one piece of Representative Kinney's question, and that is that ballots have to have been entered into the absentee ballot system ahead of time for early processing. And they have to be ready for that pre-inspection that is permitted up until 9 a.m. on the day of early processing to in fact be early processed on that day. So just to clarify, ballots would not be able to be processed until the next day of processing or election day. So it's a very regimented, structured process with very explicit checklists to the town about what they can and can't do. But they do have to enter in those ballots into the absentee ballot system.
Are you all set, Representative Wood? Good, okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Secretary Bellows.
Absolutely, and Deputy Flynn and I will be available for the work session. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So next up, we have Zach Hayden, be followed by Patty Dubois and Alicia Melnick. So if we have Zach on, welcome.
Thanks, Senator Lucchini, Representative Cayazzo, and distinguished members of the Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Zach Hayden. I am Chief Counsel for the ACLU of Maine. It's my pleasure to be with you today on your first day of public hearings. And on behalf of the ACLU of Maine, I would like the committee to urge the committee to vote ought to pass on LD 112 and 102. We see these as bills that will help the people who administer our elections and will also increase the confidence of the public in the way that elections are administered. So from the position of the ACLU of Maine, the hardest thing about your consideration this morning is deciding which of these bills to pass. I'm sure you're going to, whatever your decision will be though, the passing these bills we think is a good idea, and that's why the ACLU of Maine urges you to vote ought to pass on both LD 102 and 112. And I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the committee members might have.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hayden.
Thank you, Senator. So
next up, we have Patty Dubois. That'll be followed by Alicia Melnick and Will Setlak. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Senator Lucchini and Representative Cayazzo and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. My name again is Patty Dubois. I am the city clerk for the city of Waterville, and I am the chair of the Legislative Policy Committee of the Maine Towns and City Clerks Association. And I am pleased today to speak in support of LD 102 and also the mirroring bill of LD 112. As has been mentioned, the pandemic created a huge increase in absentee voting in the presidential election of 2020, which created the need for municipal clerks to have more time to process absentee ballots. The extension was very well received by clerks around the state. It would be a welcome addition to our toolbox as we move forward in what appears to be perhaps an ongoing shift to absentee voting. Since this legislation offers an opt-in scenario, communities that are smaller or maybe have a lower turnout election wouldn't be forced to process absentee earlies, but have that opt-in option. Basically, this bill really just gives clerks a little more flexibility in scheduling this process, especially smaller towns that have more limited staffing. It is a public process. It is a secure process, as has been mentioned by Secretary Bellows. There are uniform guidelines that all municipal clerks follow for this process. The 2020 election was a pilot for this program. We're already allowed to process absentees 4 days before an election. So this just, again, provides a little longer time and more flexibility. I'm also in support of the amendment that was offered, limiting the 30-day notice, lessening it from a 60-day required notice to a 30-day notice. Basically because, again, clerks are not totally aware of the need to process 60 days out, but it becomes more and more clear as we get closer to the election. So the 30-day notice would be preferred if possible. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm also happy to be available for the work session if needed.
Great. Thank you, Patty. And I apologize for pronouncing your name wrong. You'd think I'd have learned it by now. So Representative Kinney. So I'm not hearing Representative Kinney. I don't know if anybody else is.
Still not hearing her. It's not mute. I think it's her microphone.
Maybe a microphone issue, Representative.
You hear me? No? I tried that.
Oh, somebody.
Okay, I'm trying
There we go.
on the computer itself.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's bound to happen.
With the comment about this being a pilot program for 2020, and I'm curious as to whether or not the city of Waterville or some of these other towns have used the provision that's already in statute of 4 days, and if so, how often do you use it, and or has it ever been used in the past, and why extending it to 7 needs to happen just because it was an executive order that doesn't actually hold weight of law the way that statute does?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. The city of Waterville routinely participates in early processing in large election years, so generally even numbered election years. The 4-day provision allows some flexibility. I know that there were several communities around the state that really enjoyed the 7-day provision in 2020 because they would process for a couple hours every day during the work week when staff was present. I think they liked that flexibility. Basically, as you edge towards the end of the week before the election, the preceding week, it builds and it gets busier and busier as you prepare for the last minute things before the election. So having that ability to process earlier in the week, I think was appreciated by a lot of clerks around the state. Staffing levels are so different in communities where smaller towns have, just a couple people that might be available. In the city of Waterville, we generally process on Saturday, the Saturday before the election. We bring in a lot of additional staff and process all the absentees at one time.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Alicia Melnick, and she'll be followed by Will Setlak and Will Hayward.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, members of the VLA committee. My name is Alicia Melnick. I'm an attorney at Bernstein Scher here in Portland, where I also live. And I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to see all of your faces and have the opportunity to come before you today. This is the first but not the last time you'll be hearing from me on behalf of the Center for Secure and Modern Elections, or CSME. It's an organization dedicated to advancing nonpartisan pro-voter policies at the state level that modernize the voting process and ensure that all eligible American citizens, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or independent, can have their voice heard through policies and reforms that create an election process that's more efficient, accurate, and secure. Maine already has, as we all know, I think we're all quite proud of our voting system here in Maine, and that includes the good work of all of the clerks around the state, from small to medium towns to the city of Portland and up and down the state. This, as you've heard extensive testimony already, simply creates a little bit more of a time frame for clerks to manage this and amongst all of the other things that they have to manage when they are processing elections. We did have a trial run of this in the last election cycle with a lot of appreciation, I think, from clerks. And again, I just want to stress, as you've heard, that while the method of casting ballots may change, the legal and cultural expectations of administrators to share results in a timely fashion do not. And the legal and cultural obligations of not sharing anything that they are prohibited from law from sharing is also retained. And again, I would also stress this is a may and not a must. So this is just giving permission to clerks to do this and is not creating any kind of municipal mandate. I really appreciate both sponsors for bringing these bills forward, Representatives Moriarty and Roberts. We would also support the friendly amendment that was offered by Representative Roberts. And I think you have my written testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Will Sedlak and then Will Hayward.
Good morning, Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiasso, and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Will Sedlak, testifying in support of LD 102 and LD 112 on behalf of Maine Conservation Voters. I'm a Portland resident. Maine Conservation Voters works to make conservation a political priority and to build an inclusive democracy. We support measures that make voting more efficient, secure, and accessible for all eligible Maine voters. Today, that means supporting extending the window for municipalities to begin processing absentee ballots from the 4th day prior to the election to the 7th day prior to the election. This is a common sense change that was implemented by executive order for the 2020 general election, and one that we believe should be made permanent. By giving municipalities more time prior to election day to process absentee ballots, clerks were able to get a head start on working through the unprecedented number of absentee ballots that were cast in a timely manner by Maine voters. Because of this small but important change, almost every town in Maine was able to report its unofficial election results on election night. What did this mean for Maine and Maine voters? It helped build trust and faith in the amazing work being done by the staff in the Secretary of State's office and by town clerks across the state. Timely reporting of results allowed Maine to avoid the misinformation and doubt associated with prolonged vote counts experienced by and stoked within other states. Extending the window for when municipalities may begin processing absentee ballots allows those municipalities more flexibility as they plan for how to allocate staffing during the demanding final week before an election. Enshrining the ability of towns to process ballots up to 7 days before an election in law will be a small but important step in building and preserving voter confidence in Maine's elections. Maine Conservation Voters strongly supports both these bills and the amendment and urges you to vote ought to pass. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Representative Tuttle. I think you're on mute, Representative.
How's that, Mr. Chair?
You're good, you're good.
Well, I noticed a picture of George McGovern. I didn't know if the young man was living during that time.
The young man was not, but the young man enjoys the wonderful store at Fort Andros that sells vintage political posters. So thank you for the question, Representative Tuttle.
Yep.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. So next up we have Will Hayward, and it appears that will be it for today on these bills. So welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Lucchini and Representative Chiasso, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Veterans and Legal Affairs. My name is Will Hayward. I'm here today as the Advocacy Program Coordinator for the League of Women Voters of Maine. The League of Women Voters of Maine is a nonpartisan political organization that has been working for over 100 years to encourage informed and active participation in government, to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and to support public policy through education and advocacy. We never support or oppose any political party or candidate. I'm testifying today in support of LD 102 and LD 112. As discussed, these bills both extend the advanced processing window for absentee ballots from 4 days to 7 days. This change from 4 days to 7 days is a common sense change that, as has been discussed, was implemented by executive order for the 2020 election only. By giving municipalities more time and flexibility prior to election day, clerks were able to get a head start on this historically large quantity of absentee ballots and do so in a timely manner. And I do think it's important to highlight what some of the other speakers have said about Maine being able to report almost all of its unofficial election results on election night. This reporting on election night was really important for Maine, avoiding the issues that some other states with later start dates for processing absentee ballots face. In many of these states, the actual counting of absentee ballots couldn't take place until after the polls, in the days after the polls had closed, and this delay created concern among the public. And while this counting was a publicly observable activity, this delay did create doubt among the public, and we think that this legislation helps avoid that. In Maine, we count our absentee ballots at the same time we count election day ballots. Advanced processing allows for these ballots to be fed into the tabulating machine prior to election day and counted in a timely manner on election day. While the current 4 days go a long way towards addressing the ability of towns to report results on election night, we believe that this extended 7-day window gives more flexibility to towns. As mentioned, gives towns the opportunities to best align the processing of absentee ballots with their staffing needs, enabling by statute for towns to process ballots up to 7 days before an election, as was successfully done this year by executive order, will be a small but significant step in supporting the smooth conduct of elections and helping preserve Maine's voter faith in Maine's election outcomes. The League strongly supports both of these bills. I would also like to note that the League has no objection to the amendment offered. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I would be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Great, thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hayward. So seeing no further members of the public who wish to testify, I'll close the public hearing on LDs 102 and LD 112. And thanks to the sponsors for being here. Next up, we'll just take a minute to get the Zoom ready for our next two bills. Okay, and I think we're ready to roll. Looks like we have Director Champion here. So I can turn it over to you, House Chairman Chiazzo, and we can move to LD 16 and I can present that, where's the department bill. If that works for you.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Senator Lucchini. I'll just kick off for new people joining us, just a couple of quick reminders. For each of the bills we're going to hear, I or my co-chair will call on the sponsors and co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, you'll be promoted from the attendee to the participant. After presentation by the sponsors, the co-sponsors will call on members of the public based on how they're registered to testify for the bill, against the bill, or neither for nor against the bill, but wishing to provide information. When you're called upon, I will ask you to state your name, your place of residence, and your organization you're representing, if any. If after you're done speaking, there are no more questions from the members, I or my co-chair will return you to the attendee and call upon the next person registered to testify. When you're called upon, please make sure your microphone is not on mute. And then just a couple of final reminders. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded on YouTube and can also be heard over the legislation's audio broadcast system. And any testimony you submit in public may be posted on the legislator's website. So now we will begin the public hearing on LD 16, and I will call upon Senator Lucchini to present his testimony and introduce the bill.
Great, thank you, Chairman Chiazzo and members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. My name is Louis Lucchini. I represent most of Hancock County in the state Senate. I actually think I forgot to introduce myself earlier today, so happy to be here with you. So I'm here to present LD 16, an act to change the renewal application deadline from 6 months to 60 days before the expiration of a license issued by the Gambling Control Board. As you can see on the bill, this is a department bill from the Public Safety Gambling Control Unit, and the title pretty much says exactly what it does. It rather than having people renew their license 6 months prior, you have up until 60 days. And I think as Director Champion will explain the rationale for this, this is particularly helpful for employees who have to renew their license rather than doing it only a few months into the job, doing it closer to when the license actually expires. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer, and otherwise Director Champion will be here to speak on this one.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll thank the senator for his introductions, and I will turn the hearing back over to him.
Thank you. And so I guess up to speak, we have Director Champion from the Gambling Control Unit. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and I think I got it right, sir, this time. I apologize. And distinguished members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee. I am Milton Champion, Executive Director of the Gambling Control Unit within the Department of Public Safety. And I'm here today on behalf of the Department of Public Safety to testify in favor of LD 16, which is an act to amend the Department of Public Safety Gambling Control Board laws regarding changing the renewal application deadline from 6 months to 60 days before the expiration of a license. Currently, licensees, both companies and individuals, must submit renewal applications for licensure 6 months in advance of their expiration date. With that time in the preparation of the application, that would only realistically allow for about 5 months of activity for them to actually report on. The change would give both licensees the opportunity to have upwards of 10 months of activity or time between license to better report their position as a licensee. Individual employees are the ones that struggle the most with this requirement. The extra time for them would be appreciated, and the shorter time would not affect the suitability and financial investigations by the department. Most times, I'll tell you, just getting off my written testimony here, is the individual process has a lot to do with their taxes. taxes being filed and all that sort of thing. So it also will give the department more information over a long period of time. So I thank you for for the opportunity to appear before you this morning. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer those questions.
Thank you, Director Champion. Any questions for the director? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. And I believe if we have Karen on, that nobody has signed up to testify on this one. Is that correct, Karen?
I haven't seen an email from anyone in case, unless I've missed it.
Thank you. And we have nobody else attending the hearing. So with no questions on this, we will close the public hearing on LD 16.
Thank you.
Great. Next up on our list, we have LD 139, which is a resolve regarding the legislative review of chapters 33 to 43 concerning the regulation of fantasy gambling, major substantive rules of the Department of Public Safety Gambling Control Unit. And for this, I'll recognize the House Chairman, Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Chiazzo. I represent House District 28 in West Scarborough. And it's my pleasure to introduce LD 139, which is a resolve regarding the legislative review of chapters 33 to 43 concerning the regulation of fantasy gambling, major substantive rules of the Department of Public Safety Gambling Control Unit. This is an emergency bill, and the summary of which is the resolve provides for legislative review of chapter 33, introduction in chapter 34, definitions chapter 35, licensing applications chapter 36, licensing fees and renewal chapter 37, fantasy contest monitoring chapter 38, fantasy contest account activity chapter 39, registration of fantasy contestants chapter 40, fantasy contestants funds and required reserves chapter 41, licensee records annual reporting and audits chapter 42, collection of payments and chapter 43, complaints and disciplinary actions, major substantive rules of the Department of Public Safety Gambling Control Unit. As Senator Lucchini noted in the previous bill, this is also an agency bill, so I'm happy to try and answer any questions. Otherwise, I will defer to Director Champion.
Thank you, Representative Chiazzo. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Chiazzo, do you mind explaining this whole fantasy thing to me and how that works?
I assume you're talking about in terms of the bill in front of us, correct?
Correct. I'm new to this committee, so I'm not sure what fantasy gaming is.
Well, I would be remiss to really. I'll let Director Champion highlight the details and nuances of the program, if you don't mind.
And I think this shows kind of the strange jump our committee goes from absentee ballots to fantasy sports. So, Representative Tuttle.
Well, I had a question, Mr. Chair. Now, is this just a 10-year recodification of this area, or am I incorrect?
No, this is a rulemaking. So this is an agency rulemaking, and Janet can give us or point out later on where we can find all the rules that we can look at. And Janet gave us a briefing last week on how we respond to rules, which is, a bit different than dealing with normal bills. So that's kind of why we set that up last week.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. So seeing no other questions, thank you, Representative Chiazzo. And testifying in support today, we have Director Champion from the Gambling Control Unit. Welcome back.
Thank you. Again, good morning, everybody. Senator Lucchini, Representative Chiazzo, and distinguished members of the Veterans and Legal Affairs. Again, I am Milton Champion, the Executive Director of the Gambling Control Unit within the Department of Public Safety. I'm here today on behalf of the Department of Public Safety and the Gambling Control Unit to testify in support of LD 139, which enables a review by the legislature of a major substantive rule our agency is proclamating. Through my testimony, I would provide a short overview of the rulemaking process as it relates to offering fantasy contests in Maine. This rule is to comply with changes in state law under Title 8, Chapter 33, Fantasy Contest, with a specific statutory authority under Title 8, subsections 1102D and 11061. The rules for fantasy contests were established to include license applications, fees, monitoring, account activity, registration of contestants, funds and required reserves, records, reporting, auditing, collection of payments, and disciplinary actions. A public hearing was held on the initial proposed rules on December 12th, 2018. As a result of the public and written comments, a second request for written comments was completed on February 28th, 2020. Then a third request for written comments was completed July 31st, 2020. Most comments were incorporated into these rules, and the provisional rules were approved by me as the executive director on November 24th, 2020. I thank you for the opportunity to appear again before you this morning and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you, Director. And just for the committee's reference, daily fantasy sports have only been kind of a legal, we had I guess a big bill maybe 4 years ago that kind of legalized and established some rulemaking.
Yes, it was back in, I believe, 2017.
Right.
Actually, it was actually a big surprise for me one Friday afternoon when I found out it went into law without the governor's signature. So we've been working on these rules ever since. The reason for the big gap between 2018 and 2020 was that we were looking at the possibility of adopting GLI standards around fantasy sports, and we were found that it really wasn't appropriate. So we had a little bit of a delay in that time frame there, but then we got on board with the help of some other jurisdictions, other agencies. So we were able to put these together, and then of course with the comments from the industry.
Right, and fantasy sports have been operating for a while, and their revenues, you post their revenues on your page, right?
Not yet, sir. We're waiting for these rules. Once these rules are finally adopted, we do have 11 operators to date right now operating in the state of Maine. They are permitted to do that by statute once they've submitted their application while their application is pending. Once these rules have been finalized and finally adopted, then I'll have the ability to be able to issue licenses, and then we'll have those that are reporting over $100,000 in gross wagers will have a fee to pay. So that's the way that's working out. And I know some of this will be a lot gone over during the work sessions.
Great. Any questions for Director Champion? Representative Tuttle.
Yeah, Mr. Champion, how many of the facilities have gone over that $100,000 threshold?
Preliminarily reviewing those, I can identify at least 2.
And how many do we have?
I would say, I think the last count was 11.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on LD 139. Thank you, Director, and we'll schedule a work session and be in touch. And,
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, and so that completes our public hearing portion of the meeting. We have a work session scheduled at 11. So we've got about 15 minutes before we'll get started on the work session for the supplemental budget. We had the budget hearings last week. And so we will just take a brief recess break for about 15 minutes, and then we'll get started with the work session at 11. All right, thanks.
Reporting for duty, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, loud and clear.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Excuse me. As our agenda indicates, we'll be working on the supplemental budget. For us, most of this is curtailments. But Janet, if you wanted to, would you like to walk through where people can find the report back template? Janet sent it to us. I think mine was on 129. So this is the template that we'll be following, and Janet will also be screen sharing it. So. Janet, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that. So just for the few people who weren't here when we had our meetings last week, if you go to the legislature's homepage and you click on committees in the middle of that page, you can select Veterans and Legal Affairs, best for last. Always remember that. We're on the bottom of the list. And then at the very top, you'll find committee materials. If you click on that page, you'll start finding things that you ordinarily might find in your folder at the Horseshoe when you were in person at meetings. I'm just going to show you quickly. This is not related to the supplemental budget, but will help you on the rules we just talked about. The very top bullet point here, committee meeting materials by LD. If you click on that, we already have 2 things posted. So for one of the bills we heard, the sponsor's proposed amendment is posted. And then for the rules resolve, the actual rules that were provisionally adopted by the Gambling Control Unit are linked here. If you click on that, you'll actually get the text starting with a letter from the executive director's office, and the actual text of all those rules is right available online. So if you wanted to look at those in anticipation of a work session, which could happen as soon as next week, but I'm not sure when, that's up to the chairs. For today, supplemental budget materials. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. We have the language posted the Part A's of the budget posted, the testimony that we received is posted as well, and then also this report back template. So this is what the Office of Fiscal and Program Review sends to us to give us sort of a step-by-step way to work through the pieces of the budget and the votes that you need to take. One thing I noted in my email when I sent this to you in advance and alerted you that it was going to be posted online, and this is good to know in anticipation of the biennial budget as well, is when the Governor's Office of the Budget or Bureau of the Budget puts out the Part A of the budget, they have everything in an order. And then when the computer program that generates these voting sheets prints them out, they generate them in a different order, and the order does not always match. And sometimes that can be frustrating for people, including analysts. So the only way I can make sense of it if I print out the Part A pages and I take notes on them is if I actually cross-reference it. So if you did print out those pages and take notes and you want to compare at the beginning of every voting line or initiative, I'll tell you what page it is in Part A of the budget that's posted online and that you had available at the public hearing. This may not matter so much today because there wasn't that much detailed testimony on each individual line of the budget, but it may be more helpful for the biennial budget. So just to let you know, that's how I take care of that. Other people may do it differently, but I can't go back and forth without knowing where it is on each page. So if it only helps me, I'm sorry if it takes up your time, but hopefully it helps you too.
Representative Corey, I think, has a question.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question where, and I know there's a lot of new people on this committee as well, but whenever I've done this going through the committee process before, and, obviously we're looking at a lot of curtailments here and everything. Typically we're voting on initiatives, not necessarily curtailments. So like when we're talking about the committee vote here with regard to the curtailments, if the committee doesn't like approve of the curtailment, which I think has already been, sort of done, does that mean that we would be choosing to fund that item instead of the budget being curtailed in that area?
That is a very excellent question, one that I've wondered myself, and I've received some information from the fiscal office on that, but that would be me parroting it and probably getting it wrong. And we do have the fiscal analysts on this Zoom call with us. So I think I would defer that question to them so you can get the right answer.
Great.
And it looks like we have, I think, Suzanne. Oh, there she is. Great.
Good morning.
I'm
sorry. I'm sorry. I was doing something else, so I didn't quite get the question. I'm sorry. Do you mind asking the question again, Representative Corey?
Sure. So typically when we've done this in the past for people that have been on committees in the past, I know there's new members to the legislature here as well. We go through and we look at a series of initiatives, right? And we vote, those initiatives in or out. And that's essentially what the committee is doing to make a recommendation to appropriations. If the committee doesn't agree with the curtailment itself, right, and we vote it out, does that mean that we're saying that we actually do want that item funded, or has the money already also been taken away from that item in these curtailments? I'm not sure going through this how many of these curtailments are coronavirus relief funding and sort of everything else, but how does it all work? We're definitely looking at something different here than we've ever looked at, correct, Suzanne?
Yes, it's been a while since we've had this much of a budget deficit. So maybe I'll just step back and explain how a curtailment works and what it all means. So when the legislature is in session, normally you would get a supplemental budget, which last spring, when it became evident that we were not going to be in balance, and the Constitution requires the main budget to be in balance at the end of each fiscal year, the governor did what's called a curtailment. And basically that it's a state budget term that, doesn't mean a lot to most people. It's basically just cutting expenditures. let's say you were a construction company and, you know, the guys at the top, the CEO or the women at the top, the CEO and whoever would decide what to cut and tell the departments, here's your new budget. Well, the governor can't do that. The governor can propose to reduce appropriations, but she cannot reduce them on her own. So the only thing she can do is curtail expenses and tell the departments you're going to spend X amount less than what you've been appropriated. And so then the supplemental budget comes in and she proposes to reduce appropriations by whatever amount. And that has to be approved by the legislature. The legislature has to approve any appropriation or deappropriation. So that's why we have this budget. So if you have if it's related to coronavirus relief funds, it will say that in the initiative. Anything else is just an appropriation that's being reduced because it was curtailed. And now now the governor wants to reduce the appropriation, and that has to be approved by you. If you disagree with it and say, no, we want this out, then that means the appropriation will stay with the department. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but so if we actually say that no, we want the appropriation out and it stays with the department, does that mean it stays with the department in the next budget cycle, since it's
yes
been okay? So
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And so when we vote in one of the initiatives, that would be approving the curtailment, correct? So if you didn't want that, you could vote against it. And we always send a letter along with it to appropriations, because these really are just recommendations.
Right.
We could get more specific if somebody said, I voted against that curtailment, but I wanted to curtail it by half or something.
Yes, you could do that as well. Yeah, and if you vote to not include it, and if you vote that curtailment out, then it stays as an appropriation or allocation within that department's budget.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, Suzanne.
You're welcome.
Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so I'm clear, just because we make the recommendation that it stays in the budget, appropriation still has to approve that it stays in the budget, correct?
That's correct. Yes. You're
Thank
just
you.
making a recommendation. AFA can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
It's their budget.
I just want that to be clear to the committee members, that if we vote to keep something in, it doesn't automatically stay in. That's just our recommendation that stays in.
Correct. But the more unanimous, the more, what I've seen in the past, the more unanimous the votes are, the more they're going to take the committee's recommendation. If they get a bunch of 8-5 votes, they're probably going to do whatever they want.
Or sometimes they just do whatever they want.
Well, Mr. Chair, they usually.
Correct. The budget's under their purview, so.
I know. I give them a hard time. Representative Tuttle.
Well, Mr. Chair, they usually do that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I think what we'll generally do is follow the sheet that Janet had. We'll go line by line through, and as we said, they're mostly curtailments. There's 1 or 2 initiatives and some language. And I think where we're on this screen share mode, we're going to do votes by roll call. So Karen will call the roll on each committee vote, because the YouTube stream actually can't see us aside from the one person speaking, I believe, when the screen is being shared. So we'll go down the line and we'll do a roll call vote.
So this first initiative for you to vote on is in the Adult Use Marijuana Regulatory Coordination Fund. It reduces funding by freezing 3 vacant state police trooper positions, 1 vacant liquor tax auditor position, and 1 vacant planning and research associate position. This is part of the curtailments ordered. The justification, which is a statement that you didn't see in Part A of the budget, so this is new information for you. Although it's very related in this particular instance, it just says that it freezes 5 vacant positions and that the Office of Marijuana Policy has implemented a scaled approach to bringing on new staff allowing the office to scale in a manageable manner. And I do believe that the Associate Commissioner of DAFs is available in case you have any questions on that.
Great. Any questions? Representative McCray.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to reiterate, this is in this budget. It doesn't necessarily go into this is for the supplemental. It doesn't necessarily go into the next budget. These are temporary.
Correct. If you look here, it shows you 2021, that's the change, but that is not shown in the other lines, so it's not moving forward as far as I can tell, but if Suzanne disagrees, please jump on and tell me. It also says one time here.
Great. And I think we also, oh, Suzanne, I don't know if you wanted to.
No, Janet's right. It's just one time. It does not go into the next budget.
Great. Thank you. And we do have Jenny Boyden here from DAFs. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. It is correct that the freezing of these positions is one time. All of the curtailment initiatives are one time. They're for FY21 only. You will see some of them repeat in the 22-23 budget because as people went through looking for savings and felt that things could be achieved on a long-term basis, they did put in those initiatives again. So for freezing these positions, it is correct that these are in FY21 only, but there are position eliminations in this account going forward in 22 and 23.
Right, and we'll see those when we work the biennial budget.
Yes.
Great. Great, thank you for that. Any questions from committee members? If you do have a question, if you can raise your virtual hand because I can't see every square at once. Okay, seeing no questions on this initiative, this is a curtailment. Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass the curtailment as presented.
So
Second, Mr. Chair.
Great. So the motion on this is to move in this vote, this curtailment by Representative Chiazzo and seconded by Representative Tuttle. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeChambeau. Senator DeChambeau, absent. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCray.
Sorry, yes.
Representative McCray, yes. Representative Tuttle.
Yes.
Representative Tuttle, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolliff.
Yes.
Representative Dolliff, yes.
Okay, so I had 12-0 on that. The next one is within Bablo. So this initiative reduces funding in the Alcoholic Beverages General Operations Fund to align with projected actual expenses for non-state information technology services and consulting not encumbered in fiscal year 2020 to 2021. This is another curtailment related initiative. The justification basically says the same thing in the initiative language. And it's again one time right here.
Great. Thank you, Janet. So this is another one-time curtailment. I believe this also falls under DAFs. So I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add if Ms. Boyden's on.
Right. Again, these are entered as one-times for FY21. This is actually an initiative that you will see again in 22 and 23. The account has for the last couple of years had additional funds at the end of the year, so we felt that this could be an ongoing savings initiative.
Great. Thank you for that. Any questions on this one? And I know that it is kind of a confusing process, so if there's any questions, feel free to ask at any time. But seeing no questions, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move we accept financial order 001152F1, reference number 9, curtailment as written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we have a motion to move this in by Representative Chiazzo, seconded by Representative Wood. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll again.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeChambeau. Senator DeChambeau, absent. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray, yes. Representative Tuttle.
Yes.
Representative Tuttle, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolliff.
Yes.
Representative Dolliff, yes.
So I think that's another 12 to 0 with one absent. Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. Okay. The next many involve the Department of Defense, Veterans, and Emergency Management. Almost all of these initiatives are curtailment. There's one that isn't, and it says it right on the page to help us remember which one it is. But this first initiative, reference 117, reduces funding to reflect projected actual expenses for utility services to match available federal funding for facilities, operations, and maintenance activities within Appendix 21 of the Master Cooperative Agreement between the State and National Guard Bureau. The justification indicates that there's minimal to no impact on the Air National Guard. All salaries, benefits, and utility bills will be fully paid for and funded. Additional costs for base maintenance will be covered through an alternative funding source paid for entirely by the federal government. So it's $103,000 savings. Another one time.
Great. Thank you, Janet. And we do have a number of people from DVM here with us today, including the Adjutant General, if there's any questions. So any questions from the committee on the, and I think as explained in the public hearing on the budget, these were identified by the departments as in coordination with the governor as ways to save money given the budget situation. So any questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Representative Tuttle.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I had a question at the previous meeting about the veteran cemeteries. That's not, my understanding it's not included in here in the curtailment.
Right. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing about that position in this supplemental budget in their proposal.
Well, that would be in our regular budget, I would assume, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it could be. We haven't gone through the full biennial yet. We've got Director Richmond.
Morning, Senator Lucchini. I understood that Representative Tuttle had a question about additional positions at Southern Maine Veteran Cemetery. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's correct.
Okay. None of those are an initiative in our supplemental budget, Representative. I did want to mention really briefly that I know you had a question about that in our VLA briefing. During the time in August and September, we hadn't filled that other equipment operator position. And in September, we did fill that. It was very difficult. We had to post it 4 times to get an applicant interested in it. But we do have a full crew down there right now. An equipment operator, a groundskeeper, and a foreman, plus an office associate too in the building. I just wanted you all to know that, and I missed the opportunity to tell you last time.
Well, David, I think the issue is that the pay was low compared to what the private sector
That's true.
is paying.
It is low. It starts at about $12 and change, and an equipment operator in the market in Southern Maine can get anywhere from $25 to $50 an hour. So it is low. We did put in a management initiated FJA, and that was approved. And we're just going to we'll be funding it when the budget allows. It is not funded right now.
Well, David, I'm with you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this initiative? I think if it's easier, we can actually just go through all of these military training and operations initiatives and move them all in with one vote, if that makes it a little quicker for everybody.
Well, it does, Mr. Chair. I would, Representative Tello, I would so move.
Certainly. The next one, military training and operations, reference number 118. If you're not familiar with that, these are the little numbers down below the initiative language. That reduces funding by deferring planned architectural and engineering design services for cold storage buildings projects for military equipment. The justification says it delays design and construction of additional authorized storage space for military equipment. So that's reference 118. Also a one-time curtailment. Should I go to the next?
Any questions on 118? Seeing none, let's move to the next. Thanks, Janet.
Certainly. Reference 119 reduces funding by deferring planned architectural and engineering design services for military and civilian vehicle parking lots projects. It's again curtailment related. The justification starting on the next page says it requires DFE maintenance to absorb any additional cost from unforeseen circumstances and reduces funds available for repairs and maintenance. So that's number 119.
Mr. Chair, we have a question from Senator Farron.
Yep, Senator Farron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a question to the department just on, I know delaying these architectural and engineering projects, typically you have to do that phase of it to get the design done and the estimates done to get them ready for funding either through federal sources or even if we talk about the potential bond that's coming up. Are we putting any of these projects in danger or delay too far down the road by curtailing these design and architectural developments?
Senator, we don't think so. I mean, just making shuffling a few things around, and like I'd mentioned the other day, a lot of these items we couldn't do ongoing, but for this curtailment, these were the lowest impact ways that we could meet the belt tightening that we were asked to do.
Okay, thank you, General.
Representative Wood.
Just a quick trying to learn acronyms, DFE maintenance. What is DFE?
It's the engineering department on the Army Guard side.
Any other questions? Seeing none. I think we'll move down to 120.
So this one, excuse me, this initiative reduces funding by managing operational expenses within available resources. The justification indicates it requires DFE maintenance to absorb any additional cost from unforeseen circumstances and reduces funds available for repairs and maintenance.
Great. Any questions? Seeing none? Okay. 121.
Number 121 reduces funding by managing statewide electrical service contract expenses within available resources. Another curtailment related one, and the justification states that the in-house position will be relied on for daily operations and contractors used for emergencies as necessary. This initiative may result in delayed repairs and reduced ability to maintain facilities.
Okay, any questions on this? And we do have a bond fund being proposed that would potentially help with some of these expenses coming as well. Okay, seeing no questions, we'll go to 122.
This initiative reduces funding to reflect projected actual expenses for lawn care services in Lewiston, Skowhegan, and Brewer readiness centers. The justification indicates that full-time staff will resume duties as are being done at similar facilities.
Okay, any questions on this one? Seeing none, we'll move on to 123.
The 123 is the non-curtailment related one. I don't know if you want to include this all together in the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Actually, yeah, why don't we, so we've got the last curtailments, reference numbers 117 through 122. So if there's no objection, we can accept them all in one vote if people are willing to do that. If you want to break them out, we can do that too. So it's up to the committee if there's a preference or not.
I just assume we all do them together, Mr. Chair.
Great, great. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I will.
Go ahead, Representative Tuttle.
I will make that motion.
Okay, so the motion is to move in items 117 through 122?
And I know Representative Chiazza will second that, correct, Chris?
I will, sir.
Okay, so the motion by Representative Tuttle to move in all reference numbers 117 through 122 and seconded by Representative Chiazza. Is there any questions on the vote or further discussion on those initiatives?
No.
Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote and Karen will call the roll.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeChambeau. Senator DeChambeau, absent. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazza.
Yes.
Representative Chiazza, yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray, yes. Representative Tuttle.
Yes.
Representative Tuttle, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolliff.
Yes.
Representative Dolliff, yes.
Great, thank you, Karen. And I had 12-0, so great.
Yes.
Great, so we'll move on to reference number 123, which is the one, I guess, non-curtailment issue in the Devon budget.
So you may remember this is the initiative that provides funding for the approved range change of 6 military firefighter supervisor positions from range 17 to range 19 and 3 assistant military fire chief positions from range 19 to range 21, retroactive to 2017. The justification statement explains that 6 military firefighter supervisor positions and 3 assistant military fire chief positions were reclassified to provide for the additional duties and responsibilities required of the positions. The range changes are retroactive to 2017. This is a 100% federal expenditures program. Costs associated with federal fiscal years 2017 to 2020 will not be reimbursed by the federal government as the contract for those years is closed. Costs associated with that time frame must be paid by the general fund. Ongoing cost is covered with federal funds in the 2022 to 2023 biennium. It said NC-A-34, but I don't really know what that means.
Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question to I guess maybe General Farnham or somebody on his staff. I understood from our discussions earlier that this happens, it's a result of contractual lineups and negotiations and extension of contracts and things like that. Is there any possibility in the future to align the contracts with the federal funding so that we don't get in a situation where we have to backfill these in the future?
For the most part, Representative, it works pretty well, and they can go back. They can go back a little bit. In this case, it was an employee-initiated, a reclassification, and that takes some time to go through. It takes some time to go through and to process. And the longer it goes on before it's finalized, the harder it is to reach back. And for instance, I think some of it was just the administrative part of doing it that caused the initial part of it, and then the next, and then COVID, of course, slowed it down and probably cost us maybe a year of that. But it does unfortunately happen on occasion. The easy ones, if it's management directed or if it's an individual person, then it happens quick enough that it doesn't get caught up on this type of problem. But this one was a little more complicated just because it really was the follow-on to a much larger reclassification that had been done a number of years ago for the rest of the firefighters. That was a little bit contentious and it took a little bit of time. And then after that one went through, then of course the supervisors, looked at it and said, geez, we should be able to follow the same thing. So this was really, for the most part, out of the ordinary. Not to say that this whole idea of the 100% federally funded state employees that are working for the Air Guard and the city of Bangor isn't a very complicated thing and does cause a lot of, it causes some disconnects all the time, whether it be rules or who's running the show, so to speak, between the state, the Air Guard, or the city of Bangor. It does come up with some issues every now and then, but all in all, it works out pretty well because the city of Bangor gets their firefighting basically for nothing at the airport. But that's the way the Air Guard is paying for our ability to operate at the airport. So it's really a win-win. There's some bumps in the road on occasion.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Thank you. So is there any way to recoup any of this if they are COVID related delays, or is it pretty much set in stone? We got to pay the comeuppance now and that's it?
Well, the most recent ones, I think Nelda may know for sure, but I think we're still working on the most recent year, trying to get some of that back. The problem is the longer we go without getting it back, the longer we go without paying the firefighters. And so at some point we just got to cut bait and get it done. And then, if we are able to recoup some of that, it just goes back into the same account anyhow.
Thank you, sir.
Great. And if Nelda had anything to add to that, feel free to.
Yeah, good morning, Senator. Good morning, sirs. We are still trying to negotiate with the United States Property and Fiscal Officer because most of the agreements for prior year from 2017 are already closed. So there is this policy that has changed by the National Guard Bureau that once the cooperative agreement for that particular year, it can no longer be reopened. So we are still on negotiation with the USPFO right now, but it's not certain that we'll be able to get and recoup the amounts going back to 2017.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Farnham, you mentioned that we lost about a year. What would it be about 1 year's worth of this that we could have gotten? And is it possible, I think Representative Cazzo, I know I'm not saying that right either. I mentioned, is there any chance of us getting some of this funding back? And we're hearing probably not, but what did we lose because of the delay? And my other question would be, you mentioned it was an employee initiated reclassification. Was it one employee or was it all 9 that initiated this, or was there some sort of a cascade that came because of one initiation on the classification?
I don't know exactly how it, like I said, it was kind of the natural progression. It was kind of the natural progression of a prior reclass that was done a number of years ago. So I don't know that it was one person. I think they did it as a group. And as far as the delay goes, again, how that all works, when I say delay, we did, because there wasn't a supplemental last year, we probably knew where we were last year, and we would have put this in, we would have put this in a year ago had we known. Is that accurate, Nelda?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And are you all set, Representative? Good. Okay. And I guess just for clarity, we have 2 initiatives here, 123 and 124. Not sure if anybody can explain the breakdown, or perhaps the fiscal office, maybe Suzanne Voynick can explain the reason for the 2 numbers. If she's still on.
That's just the way our system generates it. It's just because there are 2 funding sources. There's a general fund piece and a federal piece. So
okay.
it's just a computer way of generating it.
Okay, gotcha. Yes, the only one that impacts the general fund is the top 23, and then the other comes from the federal funds, expenditures fund. Great. Any other questions on this initiative? Or any further discussion? Or if anybody would like to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move the committee accept reference 123 and 124 for as written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so the motion by Representative Chiazzo is to move in items 123 and 124, and that's seconded by Representative Tuttle. Any further discussion or questions from committee members?
No.
Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. And our clerk, Karen, will call the roll.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeShambo. Senator DeShambo, absent. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray, yes. Representative Tuttle.
Yes.
Representative Tuttle, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dollop.
Yes.
Representative Dollop, yes.
Thank you, Karen. And I got a 12-0 vote again, unanimous. Okay, so next up, we're going to move into Veteran Services. And again, here we have a number of curtailments. And so I think we'll just move through the initiatives again and then lump them into one motion if people are good with that. And if there's one that people object to, we can break it out and vote those individually.
Reference 126 reduces funding by reallocating office and other supply expenses to allow other special revenue funds funding sources. The justification indicates down here, this initiative will have no impact as the underutilized other special revenue funds account for Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery Maintenance Fund can absorb these expenses.
Okay, any questions on this one? Seeing none, we'll move to 127.
Reference 127 reduces funding by freezing one vacant office associate 2 position. Another curtailment related one. It results in additional workload for the business manager according to the justification statement.
Okay, any questions on this? Seeing none.
Reference number 128 reduces funding by managing contract expenses for advertising marketing services within available resources. The justification statement indicates this initiative will result in additional workload for the Director of Communications.
Great, any questions on 128? Seeing none, we'll go to 129.
Number 129 reduces funding by reallocating utility services expenses to allowable federal funding source. The justification statement indicates that reallocating expenses to the federal fund plot allowance account will strain cash reserves in that account.
Okay, any questions on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to 130.
Reference number 130 reduces funding by managing office professional services expenses within available resources. According to the justification statement, eliminating contracted temporary office associate and Augusta Cemetery will put additional strain on cemetery office staff.
Okay, questions on this initiative? Seeing none, we'll move to 131.
Reference number 131 reduces funding by reallocating office and other supply expenses to an allowable federal funding source. This is another one where it states in the justification statement that reallocating expenses to the federal fund plot allowance account will strain cash reserves in that account.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll go to 132.
Reference number 132 reduces funding by reallocating general operation expenses to an allowable federal funding source, and it has the same justification statement.
Right, questions on this? Seeing none, we'll move on to 133.
Reference number 113 reduces funding by managing the rental purchase agreements for a bulldozer, excavator, or other small groundskeeping equipment expenses within available resources. The justification statement indicates that quality of grounds may suffer as maintenance efforts are curtailed.
Okay, questions? Representative Tuttle.
Well, maybe to Dave Richmond, is this gonna cause a problem with you guys doing your job, David, or can we exist if we go through with this curtailment?
Thank you, Representative Tuttle. On a temporary basis for this curtailment and carrying on into the next budget, we can do without these rental agreements temporarily and just use our organic equipment.
All right, David, thank you.
Representative Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my question was answered. We do actually own some equipment. Is that correct? But this is supplemental rental of equipment?
That's correct, Representative.
And so, Director, for the time being, you feel like we can do it with our own equipment and then a bigger discussion in the biennial?
I do.
Okay. Any further questions on this one? Okay, we'll move to 134.
Reference number 134 reduces funding by managing training and conference expenses within available resources. The justification statement indicates this initiative will result in no management training, but this is only minimal impact.
Great. Any questions on this one?
Oh,
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 135.
the last initiative.
Right.
On that page.
On that page.
Sorry, I got your hopes up. Reference number 135 reduces funding by deferring the planned addition of a GPS feature to the cemetery gravesite locator system project. The justification statement indicates the National Gravesite Locator lacks a GPS feature that this project would have provided.
So, Director, I guess on this one, is this a requirement for I guess for that we have this in our cemeteries, or?
Senator O'Keefe, it's not a requirement. It's something it's an initiative that we took on a number of years ago, where we have an engineering tech 3 who is GPS surveying every grave in our cemetery system and putting them in a map so that the public can basically call up a loved one that they're trying to locate in the cemetery, and their smartphone or GPS can take them right to the grave. So the good news is we've accomplished 3 of the 4 cemeteries, and our employees working on the largest cemetery right now, and this will just put that on hold. But 3 are actually up and running, and you can access them through our website.
Great. Yeah, it's a great service to have. So this would just temporarily put it on hold, like you said, and then it's a discussion to have for the biennial.
That's correct.
Okay, Representative Tuttle.
Yes, but where is that last cemetery?
It's our original one, Representative Tuttle. It's
And
just
that's
because there's so many graves in it. It's just
all right.
so long.
But it's only temporary, and we're hoping to continue this program in the near future, I would hope.
That's our hope too.
Yep. That's 2 in a row, right?
Okay, any further questions on 135? Seeing none, we'll move to 136.
Reference number 136 reduces funding by managing maintenance expenses for cemetery equipment and vehicles within available resources. The justification statement indicates that the quality of the grounds may suffer as maintenance efforts are curtailed.
Great. Any questions on this one? Representative Tuttle. Representative, you're on mute.
Oh, you saved me again, Senator. But
It's always
there again,
Yeah,
but
go
there
ahead.
again, this is just a temporary for the supplemental. And I'm hoping that we could address this in the regular budget, because I really hate to see the veteran cemeteries in the state not maintained properly. I think it should be something that as a committee we've always done. So David, I would hope that you and the staff would help us to make sure that happens, because I will do everything I can to make sure it does.
And Representative Tuttle, this initiative is primarily focused on our 2 Augusta locations, where we have a lot of possibilities to leverage our relationships with DOT and our other in-house bureaus to help us if we have a maintenance issue. So I feel that we can get through this on a temporary basis.
Well, thank you for your info, David.
Senator Farron.
Thank you, Senator Lucchini, and the committee. I got to tell you, I was going through these, and And Senator Lucchini will tell you, typically I'm all about moving forward quickly and lumping things together. And I'm glad we're going through these initiatives. But I'm telling you, I'm sitting back looking at this, and I appreciate Dave's comments and the generals and the staff putting this together. But I read the justification that quality of grounds may suffer. You know, I know we all try to do the best that we can do, but I look at some of these initiatives and I totally agree. You know, we can do without equipment rentals, and we can do without conferences and some of that, but even some of the manpower pieces from a curtailment standpoint, or putting more burden onto others. We fought pretty hard as a committee over the years to give the Department of Veteran Services the resources that people didn't know. And I'm just afraid of agreeing to some of these curtailments that we're setting the precedent for the biennial budget to have that conversation of, well, we could do without it for the situation we found. And so I just, as we finish going through this, I think I'm going to suggest that we take them one by one and go through them instead of lumping them all together, because I know personally there's some no-brainers, but there's others I'll have a hard time putting my name beside setting a precedent of curtailing those, even though we know we're going to have this discussion in the coming months of the biennial budget.
I'll second that.
Great. Thank you, Senator Farren. And that's no problem to take them. No motion's been made to lump them anyway.
Well said,
And
Senator.
Senator, we can, certainly take it through, and it's fairly small dollar numbers on a lot of, especially the ones, as you said, with the justification being quality of grounds. I think there's a couple that are 10,000. That seems like we can find that potentially as we work through the budget. But it would be a good statement to appropriations from us. I agree. Let's go to 137.
Reference number 137 reduces funding to reflect projected actual expenses for the Caribou Cemetery security system. The justification statement indicates that this system has been replaced and the current contract will not be renewed.
Okay. Questions on this one? Representative Tuttle. We've got you on mute again, Representative.
Well, Senator, you saved me again. Well, how are they going to get their maintenance done if we abolish this line? Does anybody have any information on that?
This one's on a security system.
It is. Okay. All right.
But if Director Richmond's on, he can, I'm sure, answer it far better than I can.
Yeah, David, if you could.
Sure. Representative Tuttle, this involves an upgrade that we did in Caribou, and we switched basically to a system that's managed through OIT, a state OIT, and we were able to save in doing that and cancel our other security contract.
Do you project that anything in the future will prevent us from doing our job because of this?
Not in this particular initiative. I can give you a little, I think maybe our justification was a little bit harsh on some of the previous initiatives, suggesting that the grounds appearance would suffer if, if we take this $10,000 here, $5,000 there. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight on how we're approaching this curtailment. You may recall from our briefing last week that I talked about our plot allowance account, and that's derived from a stipend that the federal government pays us when we bury a veteran. It's around $742 per veteran, and it goes into a 013 non-lapsing account. And that account is we're leveraging that account on a temporary basis to get through curtailment. We also plan on using it in the upcoming biennial budget on a temporary basis to use that money that's typically used for perpetual care contracts, like for contracts to put headstones in or mow the grass in some of our larger areas. We're going to put an additional strain on that account for this year and our plan is for the next couple of years. And I feel that it can sustain that hit on a temporary basis. So I'm telling you this because if we find that we need $10,000 to make up for the area that I'm suggesting we cut in the previous initiative, we're going to be able to do that in that plot allowance account. So I just wanted to give you that background because we're also committed to making sure that the cemeteries are kept regardless of our budget status.
Great.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thanks. And maybe, Director, if you can give us a little more information, maybe before the next work session, just on how that plot allowance, that interplay that you just discussed, I think that would be helpful because, it seems that maybe taking another couple days and voting this on Wednesday would be better for committee members, just to give people more time to mull them over. If that works.
I'd agree, Mr. Chair.
We can do that.
Thanks, Director. And we can, we have time. We can build this into Wednesday's schedule. And I think our report back's due by Friday. So we can take some time and plan to vote on Wednesday.
Appreciate that, Senator.
Yeah, anytime. So I guess, Janet, if we're ready, we can roll to 130. Let's see, is that 138? We'll just get information on these as we go, and then we'll, just so we ask any questions now and be ready to move on Wednesday.
Certainly. Reference number 138 reduces funding by reallocating office and other supplies expenses to allowable other special revenue funding sources. The justification statement indicates this initiative will have no impact as the underutilized other special revenue veteran services account can absorb these expenses.
Any questions on that initiative? Seeing none, we can go to 139.
This is the last one. Reference number 139 reduces funding by managing staff training expenses within available resources. The justification statement indicates this initiative will result in no learning opportunities for staff.
Okay, any questions on item 139? Seeing none. Okay, so that concludes the portion on from DVM under Veteran Services. So if it seems like more time would be helpful for a lot of us, just to kind of work through, as there are a number of curtailments. So if there's a motion, we can a motion to table items 126 to 139. We can entertain that and take it up later. Senator Farron.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay. I think we got a
Second and third and fourth.
Yes. Motion by Senator Farron, seconded by Representative Kinney, third, fourth, and fifth by Representative Tuttle.
There you go. Let's hope.
Okay. And so I guess we have to roll call that vote quickly. If Karen is available to roll call.
I can do it if you want.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeShambo. Senator DeShambo, absent. Senator Farron.
Yes.
Senator Farron, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray, yes. Representative Tuttle.
Yes.
Representative Tuttle, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolph.
Yes.
Representative Dolph, yes.
Great. I think that's 12-0. So we'll bring those up. I think the plan will be to take them up on Wednesday, because we're not planning to meet on Friday this week. Okay, so we'll move to the next portion of our budget. It's on page 10 of the document, or the one that's being screen shared now, and we're moving into Secretary of State department. And thanks to Secretary Bellows, and we've got Julie Flynn and David LaChance on here as well from those departments.
So the Secretary of State portion of the supplemental has one initiative and one language section. The initiative is reference number 526. It reduces funding by freezing one vacant elections coordinator position and one vacant customer representative specialist elections position for the remainder of fiscal year 2020 to 2021. The justification statement just indicates that this initiative freezes the position for a full year for the elections coordinator position and for 10 months for the for the customer representative specialist elections position.
Great. Thank you, Janet. Any questions on this? Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can't remember if I asked this during the preliminary hearings, so if I did, I apologize. If Secretary Bellows could elaborate. I know when we first got her briefing, there was a lot of overtime, like a really lot of overtime. And I'm wondering if this curtailment is going to impact any of those overtime budgets, especially as we have citizens referendums come through and things like that. And if so, is it really a cost offset, or are we anticipating pretty extensive overtime charges as well for those activities?
So I'm going to invite Deputy Flynn and Director LaChance to elaborate, but I will express my concern that, just to remind the committee, my testimony reflected we had 73 weeks of overtime in 2020. Thank you for flagging that, Chair Chiazzo. And that's just because of the necessity of completing all of our statutory obligations to conduct elections. This month, we are processing petitions for a new referendum. And on Friday, I issued authorization again for comp time, which is one form of overtime. It has a liability for so that we can finish processing those referendums on time. So I do have some mild concerns about this, but I also recognize the obligation of balancing the budget. And I want to commend the department for stepping up to answer the governor's call for the curtailment last year. But to your point, the election staff is understaffed. And I invite Deputy Flynn and Director LaChance to put a finer point on that if they choose.
Good afternoon, Ms. Julie Flynn. Part of the overtime, and I don't know if it came through in the budget hearings, but the overtime accrued by me, by Melissa Packard, and by Heidi Peckham, we are all what's called overtime exempt. We're salaried employees. So ours was gratis time to the state. There's no, we don't gain any comp time or anything. So we're just doing what we have to do to get things done. But it is, it is a concern. We do make use of people from other parts of the office to help with petitions, but we are going to have to at least give people some compensatory time and a half, rather than direct paid overtime during the next month. And the reality is we just didn't have any extra money in the budget for all other that we could give up for the curtailment. And so we had a couple positions that had become vacant, and that was the only thing that we could offer up to try to meet our share of that.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Deputy Flynn.
Follow up, Mr. Senator?
Yes, Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I appreciate that. Being a salaried, non-exempt person myself, I know there's only so many hours in the day. My concern is that, you know, we're stepping over a penny to pick up a pound, so to speak, right? If it makes sense to fund those positions so that we don't have burnout, or we have people retiring sooner than they should be, and have create a bigger need later on, I think that needs to be part of the discussion. I know everybody has to pitch in and do their part, but I'm just wondering, you know, I would hate to say, you know, on paper it looks great, we're giving up 123,000, but if we're going to authorize, or it requires $200,000 worth of additional labor down the road, are we really saving any money, or does it make sense to fund those positions to reduce the overtime later on in the budget? And I'm certainly not telling you guys how to do your job by any stretch. I just want to understand that, you know, as we make that decision moving forward.
Director LaChance, do you want to add anything in terms of budgeting for the department?
Sure.
Any comments?
Sure. Julie's budget is a very tight budget in terms of personal services and all other. She runs a very tight ship, and she does the best she can. The savings that you're seeing here are for one time. These positions will not be frozen in the biennial budget. You will not see that. So, you know, this is a real challenge for her, and she's doing the best she can. She has other challenges along with trying to achieve these savings. Any type of salary increases or attrition targets have to be met. We have to self-fund those. So that's also a challenge as well. So, you know, in terms of operationally, whether she can make it, that's really her call. But from a budget standpoint, a financial standpoint, that's where we are. It's very tight for her, and she's doing the best she can.
Great. Thank you, Director LaChance. And we're starting to get some feedback. So if people can remember to mute when they're not speaking, it's starting to kind of sound a little staticky. Representative Tuttle.
Yeah, I'd agree with good Chair Caluso that I just don't want to be penny smart and pound foolish. I think that what we're doing, it may look like we're saving money on the short end, but I can tell you when we get the figures back, and I've been through a few budgets over my years, you're going to see that how much money it has increased instead of losing it. I know up front from a supplemental perspective and making the budget balanced that we have to do this, but as a priority with the long-term budget, I think we have to realize that by doing this, it's going to cost us more money in the long run, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Corey.
Yeah, so the way I'm reading this, at least right now, is that we're really only doing this in 2020 through this upcoming June, correct? Like until the next budget goes into play. So this is something that's already been realized and done from my understanding.
That's correct. So this was frozen in June, and the savings, some of the savings have already been realized. There would be savings, additional savings in maintaining the freeze through the end of this June. But in the biennial budget, these positions are unfrozen, which I think is absolutely necessary.
Great. Do you have a follow-up, Representative Corey, or good?
No, that was more of a statement because this is more like a work session right now. So, you know, I'm just simply stating that, you know, this is already done, and I'm not sure that, you know, this is what we're doing going forward, other than, you know, for those few additional months to get us through this fiscal year. And certainly if we're, you know, going to be looking at voting out, you know, sections of this, we need to find areas where we as a committee are willing to vote in some of the budget reductions that we've seen, at least in the supplemental budget. I know we're the committee of jurisdiction and that we'll be sending this to appropriations to, make that final determination, but I still think that, we have to make some hard decisions here ourselves. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, agreed. So we've got Representative Kinney, then Representative Wood, then Senator Fair, and then Representative Tuttle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Representative Corey. It seems that the issue we had with the overtime was in relation to the 2020 election cycle, which we don't have another one coming up between now and June. And it seems that this will come right back into the biennial budget that we will be dealing with, that will start on July 1st if we can get it to be passed by then. So it seems to me we're in a perfect time to freeze this vacant spot and not hire someone right now, which saves us this $123,000 on a budget year where we are in a deficit. So I'm very much in favor of this initiative. It is just going to be until the end of June 2021 when we can have further discussions as to whether or not it needs to be filled come July 1st. And this will help us to balance the budget that is much needed.
Representative Wood.
I just wanted to speak to the overtime issue as somebody who managed a large for-profit, which I understand is different than state government, at LL Bean, where we would do a cost analysis about, do we want to fill a position or do we have people that want to work the overtime, and what would be the cost for the overtime, so that you can just do a comparison as to if people are picking hours up to make up the difference, and that's only $50,000 versus we're saving $123,000, then you're still ahead of the game. I do understand what you're saying though about the exempt people having to work additional hours without compensation, but it's just something that we did on a regular basis, was doing a cost analysis of filling positions versus what the overtime costs were.
Thanks. Senator Farren, did you have a question? You good? Okay.
Thank you. Good.
Okay, we've got Representative Tuttle and then Representative McCray.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just as a historical perspective, this committee usually does our work in cutting the necessary programs, and historically we've done that. Unfortunately, other committees haven't been or haven't done as well, and I sort of hate to be that we do our jobs and others don't do their jobs. So I think we need to look at that from a perspective of what we think is important, that we do our fair share, but we have to make sure that the other committees do their share, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as Senator Farren raised the concern about precedent with the other initiatives, I want to raise it with this one. And I appreciate Representative Corey's description about freezing. That was really helpful. But I'm concerned about precedent, and I'm also concerned about, it's more than money, it's about morale. When people are working overtime, whether they're paid or not, it's a morale issue. And in my opinion, the staffing has been too low to begin with. So I worry about looking as though we're saying this was okay, because I'm worried about the consequences of that impression going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCray. Representative Wood, did you have a question or? I can lower some hands here. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Oh,
Take your flag off.
sorry. I think I did that one. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think it's possible to do both things. I think it's possible to, look at sort of this cut that was, put forth by the Secretary of State's office, and at the same time, put in a letter the committee's interest in keeping morale up while approving a budget cut like this, and saying that we're not necessarily for people having to work overtime and everything. So I think that there's a way to do both things without putting it on appropriations to deal with this. I mean, we can take some easy votes here if we want, but we're really ultimately passing it to another group of people to decide, whether or not it's going to be a hard or an easy choice, where I think it's possible for us to say none of these things are easy choices, but we recognize that there was a pandemic, and that's caused all of the departments across state government to have to make some cuts. So the committee could certainly write a letter, as we have in past committees I've sat on, talking about what our feelings were about each one of these initiatives.
Yeah, thanks for that, Representative Corey. And I agree. I think we can, in our letter, and Janet can craft it for us, we can add language like that, this doesn't mean this is something we'd want to do on an ongoing basis. And we'd certainly will have a chance to weigh in on the ongoing basis in the biennial budget by, taking votes, especially if these are going to be unfrozen in the next fiscal year. There any other questions on this initiative? Oops. This is initiative 526. So if there's, Senator Farron.
I was just going to make a motion to move in initiative 526.
Okay,
Second.
A motion to move it in by Senator Farron and seconded by Representative Kinney. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we can proceed to a vote, and we will have our clerk, Karen, call the roll.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeChambeau. Senator DeChambeau, absent. Senator Farron.
Yes.
Senator Farron, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCray.
No.
Representative McCray, no. Representative Tuttle.
No.
Representative Tuttle, no. Representative Riley.
No.
Representative Riley, no. Representative Supika.
No.
Representative Supika, no. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dalla.
Yes.
Representative Dalla, yes.
May I ask for the people who voted against, would you have a different amount, or would it just be completely keep it out?
Completely keep it.
Agreed.
Okay. Yep. So for members on that report, just to completely keep the funding, is that good with everybody?
Yes. Representative Tuttle.
Great. And so
I have 8 to 4 on that.
okay, thank you. 8 to 4. Gotcha.
The last thing to vote on, other than the tabled items, is Part T, the language part of the budget. And this states that notwithstanding any provisional law to the contrary, the state comptroller shall carry forward any unexpended balance in the all other line category at the end of fiscal year 2020 to 2021 to the next fiscal year in the Department of Secretary of State Elections and Commissions Carrying Program General Fund account to be used as matching funds for the Federal Help America Vote Act Election Security Grant.
Great. Thanks, Janet. So this is just a carry forward of the balance to the next
To next fiscal year, yes.
Yeah. Representative Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to sort of get an accounting over, the last 20 years or so when HAVA became law of how these monies have been used in the state of Maine to protect our voter lists from people that are no longer, actually voting. I know that, I was sort of reading, there was a report that sort of came along with this and, the things that, they plan on doing. Like, I believe that they said that they were going to send out a postcard and everything else. And maybe the Secretary of State can talk about that a little bit, but I'd at least, like to know how these funds have been, used in the past since HAVA was enacted at the federal level. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to defer to Deputy Flynn to talk a little bit about the history. We could absolutely put together some materials to forward to the committee. I do want to share with everyone that we have some planned activities for the coming year. I submitted a report on the central voter registration system and list maintenance activities that we plan to do in the year to come. Happy to speak to that report at a different time. And just so the committee, especially new members, are aware, have our Federal Help America Vote Act funds. Currently, Maine has 6.6 million. This is particularly important around the technology, the central voter registration system, which I shared in testimony to the committee, dates back to 2007. So we're in an important technology investment juncture. This carryover is from the 5% match. The feds require a 5% match from the state for their allocations. And this is a carryover from the 2018 allocation, which has not been spent in full. But we do want to preserve that to do the necessary technology upgrades to keep the system secure and to do the planned list maintenance activities. But Deputy Flynn is here. She wants to speak to some of how we have spent HAVA funds in the past. We can certainly provide that in more detail to the committee.
And Deputy
I think
Flynn.
she's here.
Yeah, it's hard to find on this format.
Yeah.
Want me to stop screen sharing? I can.
Sure, I think this is our last one anyway. Yeah, if that's okay. I don't see her at the moment.
Actually, she may have had to exit. I know she had allocated 11 to 12 for the meeting, unfortunately. So Representative Patrick, Corey rather. That's funny.
I have two first names, so this happens all the time. I'm fine with that.
And you've got them reversed on your box. That's a pretty good trick right there.
That is pretty good. I'm going to be messing people up all day.
Yeah, people will think that you're, you and former Senator John Patrick are the same person.
Well, Patrick's not from Rumford.
Oh no, I don't want that to happen. I'll change that right away.
So what we can do is supply to you a more detailed breakdown of how we've spent HAVA funds. Those first became available over a decade ago. And so, but we can give you that historical timeline of how funds have been invested. But just so you know, in terms of in 2021 and what this carryover is for, We really are at a decision point with our central voter registration system, which was implemented in 2007. So we're 14 years after the technology install. I'm not sure that this certainly predates my iPhone, for example, or the iPhone. So we're at an important moment where we need to decide whether to go out to bid for a new CVR or and probably we will. And that's where these funds will be largely utilized. And then list maintenance activities, that's doing a mailing to people who have not voted in the last 2 federal elections, or, especially because when we brought Maine online into the central voter registration system, there are people who haven't voted since they have been brought online into the CVR. So we will issue a mailing to all of those voters, and for mailings that bounce back, those voters will be either made inactive or removed from the rolls in accordance with federal law.
Representative Tuttle.
Yeah, I'd agree with Representative Corey. I'd like to have a breakdown of how much money we're talking about.
Yep.
And where it goes. I think it would be very helpful, not just for this supplemental, but for the future.
Right.
Secretary of State Bellows. But thanks for the information.
Great. Representative Chiazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this might be along the lines of Representative Corey's request. Do we have an understanding of how much balance is moving forward? It says, if any, are we talking a significant amount of money, or is it it's going to be fluctuating depending on what other programs are initiated between now and then?
My understanding is it's just over $100,000 that's being carried over from the 2018 allocation. And that is so that we can expend the federal funds that were allocated in 2018. This does not include any state match for 2020 HAVA funds. And I did receive some questions from some members of the legislature as to whether it was true that Maine had not applied for HAVA funds because we were the only state that wasn't reflected on the federal EAC website. It is not true. We did in fact apply and did receive federal HAVA funds this fall. But this does not include a state match for those funds because that's not yet contemplated. That would be in the next biennial budget should we request that.
Right. And previously we had done a state match and gotten a significant amount of federal funds, and that is what this would be carrying over. Right.
Yeah.
And I noticed we have Deputy Flynn on. I don't know if you want to add anything, if you've been able to hear any of this, or.
Well, I had to do a TV interview for a second, but the first amount of money that we got only required a 5% match. So that's the $156,000 in change that you appropriated a couple of years ago to match that. The new amount needs a match of about $702,000. So there are some state expenditures that we will be making that we normally make that can be used as matching funds. So we're still trying to work through that and figure out how much can we do as a third, it's called a cash match, an expenditure match versus having to appropriate more money. But we were able to use the CARES Act to defray some expenditures on the additional voting equipment rather than using the security money. So we spent about $236,000 in leasing additional equipment for last November, 210 additional units, some of them to about 45 new hand count towns that we brought on. So by having the CARES Act money available, we were able to use that because it was because of the CARES Act, because of the COVID virus, that we were doing so much more absentee balloting and processing that we were able to use that. So that did save that money that we were otherwise going to spend out of the security money.
Representative Kinney, that's a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm guessing, like my question on this, that if we didn't pass this information where it carries this money, this funding over, would this then instead get swept into the general fund and we'd never see it again? So carrying over this funding is extremely important for this program.
Well, for the federal grant, we're required to have the matching funds. So if it got swept or not carried over, we're anticipating spending it in the next fiscal year. The activities that we're doing right now don't require a match, so we do need it to carry over. It was put in a non-carrying account when we set up the account, and that was what the Office of Budget wanted it to be done. So we do need to carry it over so that we meet our obligations under the federal. Otherwise, we'd have to give back the money if we can't match it.
Okay, that was my question, is it would then get swept away and we would lose it if we don't carry it over.
We'd lose the 3.2 million in federal money if we couldn't match it. That's right.
Gotcha. Thanks. That's helpful. Yeah. Other questions on this one? Seeing none, do we have a motion on this? This is part T.
I will move, Mr. Chair, that the committee accept Part T as written.
Okay. So motion is to
I'll second it.
taken Part T by Representative Chiazzo and seconded by Representative Corey. Great. Any further discussion on this one? Seeing none, we'll. Okay. Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote, and the clerk will call the roll.
Senator Lucchini.
Yes.
Senator Lucchini, yes. Senator DeChambeau. Senator DeChambeau, absent. Senator Farren.
Yes.
Senator Farren, yes. Representative Chiazzo.
Yes.
Representative Chiazzo, yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray, yes. Representative Tuttle.
Yes.
Representative Tuttle, yes. Representative Riley.
Yes.
Representative Riley, yes. Representative Supika.
Yes.
Representative Supika, yes. Representative Wood.
Yes.
Representative Wood, yes. Representative Kinney.
Yes.
Representative Kinney, yes. Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Harrington, yes. Representative Corey.
Yes.
Representative Corey, yes. Representative Dolliff.
Yes.
Representative Dolliff, yes.
Okay, and so I have 12-0 on that one. Okay, so it's a 12-0 unanimous vote. And so that concludes the supplemental budget work session for today. Thanks everybody for sticking around. Thanks for, when you go last, you have to sit around for a while, so apologies for that. So Janet, do we have anything else that we need to cover today before we leave? I know we've got our next meeting will be Wednesday. We're going to begin at 10 o'clock with some public hearings. We also have a kind of like a briefing on the liquor laws in Maine, which Janet's going to give a presentation and just some background. We try to do all of those things in advance of dealing with a lot of the bills in those categories. And we have a fairly complicated liquor system. And we'll also make sure to take up the remainder of the votes under the DVM Veteran Services lines Wednesday as well, because I think our report back is due by Friday.
So, Mr. Chair, nothing tomorrow, eh?
Nothing tomorrow. We're just Monday, Wednesday this week.
Well, I guess Chris and I will be digging out, right, Chris?
Yeah.
If you feel like grabbing a shovel, Representative Tuttle, come on over.
Well, I'll bring my son-in-law. He's better at it than I am, Chris.
Hey, Wyndham's not that far away too. You can shovel me out as well.
Living on a farm is nice. I have tractor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Can I come over and drive your tractor, Marianne?
You think my tractor's sexy, huh?
Sounds like a committee trip right there. Yeah, so Janet, do we have anything else, or are we good from your end? Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you all on Wednesday. Good luck with the snowstorm tomorrow.
Great job with the first public hearing, guys. It went as very smooth considering. So I appreciate everybody's efforts for sure.
Good job, all.
Great. We'll adjourn for the day. Thanks.